Are you ready for our next adventure? Let's head over to Furniture Fairy Falls in Fitchapelago and see where the fairies are sprinkling their magic this week. Tales of the Furniture Fairy. This is the Lord's sign to you that the Lord will do as he has promised. Isaiah 38:7. Chapter 2. Give us a sign. In our last episode, one of the fairies asked her, "Whatever will we do with all this wood?" With a wink and a nod and a wish-wash-whoosh, Bloom had a bright idea. She took out her pouch of fairy wishes and magically transported everyone to her lake home on Success Island. There she showed the three fairies the Relax beach sign she had made out of part of the desk she found on her way to Reassurance Reef. Inspired by how she repurposed part of the desk, they asked her to teach them how to make signs too. Excited to share her ideas with them, Bloom happily agreed. "Sure, I'll show you how I did it." I like to take 3D artwork and put it together and make something even better. So we have to start by measuring and figuring out what kind of platform we're going to put the piece of artwork on. So every time I get boards, repurpose things, take things apart, I mark on them the actual size they are, and I have them in my craft room. I also have them in my workshop area so I can find what I want at a glance, and I don't have to go find and cut and do those things. So it's already ready. So forgive some of the shadows here, but you can see this actually had pegs in it, and so I need to cover them up or fill them in, and you'll see what I decide to do in a few minutes. But here now we're getting placement designed. Where are we going to put it? What other elements? You can see I have some sand on the left, and I have different pieces. I've got shells. I know an idea of what I want to do together, but I need to start kind of dry fitting them and putting things together. Putting out some shells, finding what really looks, what am I trying to say? What representation is going on here? And that's part of all your creative ability yourself. What do you want this to look like? You can see in the middle, I have those holes there that I'm going to have to cover up. And here I've identified that the Relax sign has a couple areas where the veneer is lifting up off of it. So you'll see in a few minutes I'm going to fix that. So now I'm examining the rest of the board, because what am I going to do with it? I know that, again, this is a repurposed piece. I'm going to have to fill that in or put something around it, and I vacillate on a couple different ideas, but that particle board needs to be filled, especially for looks wise. Plus you can see that there were dowels in there before that were keeping pieces of furniture together. So I have both of those sides that need to be taken care of. And you can see here there's some veneer. So I also have a choice of putting an edge banding on there, putting some, I said veneer, it's not, it's edge banding. I can put some edge banding around or do something else. So now I'm identifying what color I want to do. Am I going to add some accent colors? I take each stick, a popsicle stick, and put it in each one of my paints. So then when I'm looking for something, I can just lay them all out and see what matches up well. There I've matched up some pieces of the bicycle. That right there is the agave that matches with the beach sign, which actually ends up what I use for the project. And you can see the browns in the sides versus the brown on the background, that I'm trying to get that scape, put that into perspective. Now, the Relax sign here needs to be sanded just a little bit, but because that's a light veneer on the top of there, if you sand it backwards, then you're going to end up ripping more of it off. So here I'm gently trying to make sure that there's smooth edges everywhere I go and nothing's going to be lifting up. And we have to glue down certain pieces, and you'll see in a minute that I'm going to use a little dental floss or a dental pick. Sometimes I will use a syringe, but in this case they're so tiny that if I just use the glue and put a little bit on the tip, I can kind of stick it underneath and press that down. Because again, that's what we're trying to do, is get a secure fit. Nothing worse than you selling a piece of artwork or putting it on your own wall and later on that it comes up. So putting it inside there, laying it down. Sometimes you might need to put some clamps and some wax paper on, but in this case I didn't. Now here I had decided that I was going to go around the edge of the relax sign, and I was going to do basically those areas that you can see as kind of a shadow, and I was going to do that in the color I had chosen. So that's why I start taping it off here. I did end up changing my mind. I wanted to go with something just a little bit lighter. Plus, it is a little bit tricky, especially in between the A and the E there, for you to get your get everything in there, even depending on how small your brush is. Now, I always add a little bit of water to my chalk paint. That was an agave chalk paint by Waverly. When I'm using a makeup sponge, dabbing it on, I use those pads. You can use a puppy pad, or you can use the little pads there. I use them all the time. You'll see in most of my artwork. And here I'm just trying to put a little, just kind of a little cloud of color around the edge, just to give it a little bit of a pop. And I do end up going around, I believe, another time just to kind of get it where I want it. But I really I like the white, I like how it looks, but I wanted to just give it a little bit of color. And when you dab it right there, that's an important part. Otherwise, you'll end up with too much paint. Now you can wipe it off, but when you use those makeup sponges, if you just go along the edge, like we do in scrapbooking, if we're trying to maybe make a distressed edge on paper, I use the same thing with ink. And then you can use a detail brush to kind of clarify those things and make it work easier. Now here, I'm using a dowel to stick in the holes where dowels were before, so I don't have to fill so much wood putty in there. I am going to cut it with my miter shears right there. You can see them on the left in just a second, but here I'm assessing the situation and how many that I need. You want the dowel to come flush or just under where you're putting your wood putty to get yourself that solid substrate. So here I'm using the miter shears, and they're pretty easy. They do pop. You'll see in a second. They boop, and they pop out. So you might want to make sure you have a little area there. So it takes a little bit of pressure, but it's actually fairly easy. I think I was a little bit tepid or trepidatious. I don't know. I was being a little cautious there in case it was going to spit out, and fly around. You should always have some kind of goggles on too, some kind of work glasses, just in case. So here again, I assessed the situation. I stuck the dowel in as a plug, and this is actually color changing wood putty. I believe it was Elmer's, and we're gonna put that up there, a picture of it on the screen there. But it's usually pink inside here. I just wanted to show you guys here, and I think some of the video footage is missing, but I take that wood putty, oh here it is, and then I'll spray water. That misting bottle right there is going to be one of the key elements, and we'll make sure that we have links in the description of where you can get them on our Amazon store, so you can help support the You Are Enough Global Initiative. But it's really helpful because when the pink is gone, that's telling you that it's dry. When you don't seal the top of that bucket well enough, it gets a little bit dry, and so it starts to turn that brown color. When you add a little bit of water to it, you'll see your pink come back. It still works fine. It just has lost that property where it's going to turn brown. Now, if it's hard, that's a little different. But again, most of the time you can just add a little in and use it for areas like that, filling in the areas, getting around the edge, and you'll see in a little bit that I'll sand it off. Now here, you always want to clean your surface. I use Dawn dish soap, just a little bit of it, and then I always wipe it off with a clean rag afterwards, just to make sure we don't have any residue. Now there's a little bit of white paint there. I'm trying to decide, that is not actually white on there already. I think that is the camera, the light up above there, and it's coming out a little too light. So I decided to add some more paint, and then I kind of go back and forth, because what you want to do is just get it where you want. And that is the agave, that is Waverly chalk paint in white. Again, adding just a little bit of water to it. I hate wasting. I don't know about you guys, but I hate wasting. And so I will kind of run my brushes, the brush that I stirred or a stir stick against there. And this, again, is part of it's going to be underneath. So what you're trying to do is just get the texture you want. Now here, my stuff is dry now, the wood filler, and I need to sand that down. And then I have a choice to make. Am I going to use a rope? Am I going to paint it? And so while you're deciding, you kind of go back and forth and look, hey, well, if I put this out, yeah, how does the rope look? And I think it looks nice, but ended up doing something you'll see in a second here. And I was showing you how I do every paint that I come in. One side tells you the brand and the other side tells you the actual color that it is. And so I will pull them out looking for which ones, because so many colors are in each piece of artwork. You can see truffle matched over there on the darker parts, melted chocolate matches some, and then the khaki. The khaki is what I ended up going with, which is an apple barrel paint. And after I finished sanding that, I put the khaki paint on it, and I'll show you the first coat there. I think I did the second coat off camera, because you can see I was having such an interesting. It's hard. There's the first coat. It was an interesting thing trying to get it up so when the camera's not quite up that high. That's showing you that the surrounding area it looks good, and then putting that paint on looked nice. Now this is where I finally take off the protective covering, because during all that other time it can really get dirty and there's dust from sanding and stuff, so I always leave that on until the end. Now here I use both E6000 and my hot glue to try and get the immediate hold, the long-term hold, and you don't want to mix those because they can counteract each other, and one can stop the other from working. So you'll notice that they're in separate areas, and you got to allow for a little bit of flow as well, that you don't want them to flow into each other. Now I lay that on there in approximately the area, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Nobody else is really measuring it. It's just something that you want to do, and then you need to put some firm pressure there to make sure that it will stay sealed. Now if you see that Vaseline there, always dip or put a little piece of Vaseline on the top of your like adhesives, like super glue or the E6000, and make sure that it doesn't end up getting stuck on top of there. And here I'm just trying to measure out a little bit, approximately how it is, and you can see the hole there at the top. I have to make sure that I'm going to be covering those up. And here again, I'm going to use the E6000 as well as the hot glue to make sure I get both of those holds. And it's really important that you get a firm hold on some of these things. And in a minute, I'll show you what I did with the shells, but I'm going to tell you what I do now with the shells. At that time, I didn't. And you can see how subtle that blue paint is there, the edge, the agave that we put around the edge, but it actually makes a big difference. It gives it just that little kind of like a cloud feeling, just something that highlights it and it doesn't pull your attention there, which is what I was afraid was going to happen if I actually did outline everything. So there I'm covering up whole, making sure that the shells are accenting, and you can see how nicely those shells complement the actual picture there as well. And that's what we want to do. Use your talents and abilities. Look at things in a new light. Most people don't see an old desk that somebody left out by the curb as something to create artwork with. Something that they can use as a backer for something else, where you can, again, create that 3D art. So here I'm taking the E6000 to put on the shell. Now, it does work, but I will tell you now, every time I do woodworking and I go to VBC College and do additional woodworking, I save all the little pieces of wood there. You can also use pieces of Jenga blocks and stuff like that, the little cubes you can get at Dollar Tree. But when you put them underneath there, it gives you glue the wood into the shell and then glue the wood onto the wood. It makes it a lot easier, because trying to just get the outline of that shell and areas where it's flat is a little bit tricky. So that is me showing you to make sure you use that Vaseline, and then look what happens where we start with just a piece of artwork. We take it and create something new, something special. Excited with what they had learned, remembering how many pieces of wood they had, the fairies cheered, "More, more, more!" Then they looked at each other and in unison squealed, "Can we all make one?" Bloom smiled, and with a wink and a nod and a wish-wash-whoosh. Tune into the next episode to find out what new tales the fairies have to tell. Follow us for more adventures on our social channels at Furniture Fairy HQ. And help support the You Are Enough Global Initiative by checking out our Amazon store in the link below. Until next time, remember, you are enough just the way you are.